Again, my name is Matt Sinovic. I'm the Executive Director of Progress Iowa. Just a reminder for everyone to put yourself on mute unless you are speaking. That helps with the audio and just how we can record this event. This is one of 7 different events going on around the state. This is we're calling them the People's Condition of the State. You're going to be hearing from the governor and the Republican-led legislature starting tomorrow and throughout this legislative session. But before the legislators kick off the session, we wanted the public and everyone to hear from leaders and citizens across the state. So to declare the people's condition of the state. And so that's the purpose of this event, to make sure that people's voices are heard, that the issues that matter to Iowa families are being heard. And so I'm going to give a couple of housekeeping items before we get started here with our wonderful panel. The first is that this event is being recorded. We will share a recording of this video afterwards with press, and it'll be posted online on Progress Iowa's YouTube account. We want to make sure that as many people see this so we can get the word out, but want to make sure everyone's aware that we are recording this event. The next is I want to just thank the speakers that we have here today. We have Iowa Representative Chris Hall, Senator Jackie Smith, and Sioux City Council Member Alex Waters, who you'll be hearing from in a minute, and we're just thrilled to have them here. Also, Jeremy Dumkrieger is a great leader in Sioux City who helped organize this event as well. So I want to give a shout out to Jeremy. Thank you so much. I also want to thank the sponsors of this event. We have and all of our People's Condition of the State events across the state. We are not able to pull this off without the help of so many participating organizations and really good allies that we are able to work with to help promote progressive values and support the policies that improve the lives of Iowa families. So I want to thank AFSCME Council 61, APWU Iowa, Healthcare for America Now Iowa, the Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, Iowa Citizen Action Network, Iowa Alliance for Retired Americans, Iowa Main Streets and County Roads, Lower Drug Prices Now Iowa, Progress Iowa, of course, and Tax March Iowa. So we have, and there are a number of other organizations that have helped all over the place. And this, like I said, this just does not happen without their support. And so it takes so many people in a coalition to pull off events like this and to promote the ideas that we believe in. So we want to say thank you for everyone who's doing that. Before I introduce our speakers, I do just want to say that this is about taking care of our communities. It's about standing up for what we believe in. And we all know that the needs of working families in Iowa have been ignored. Access to health care is out of reach for too many, and our education system is just lacking the resources it needs to prepare the next generation. Most importantly, working families need quality, good paying jobs. And together we are here to stand up for those values and to stand up to corporate Kim Reynolds and the Republican-led legislature, because we know that we can do better. And we're here to hold them accountable, stand up for what we believe in so that we can have a brighter future. So that is the purpose of today's event. It's the purpose of all of these events. And with that, I'm actually one more note before I kick it over to our first speaker. Please put any questions you have in the chat, and we'll get to them at the very end with a Q&A. But it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, our friend, Iowa Representative Chris Hall.
Well, thank you, Matt, and good afternoon to everybody who's logged in. I just want to say thanks to Progress Iowa for putting together this event, and also thanks to the coalition of partners that Matt mentioned. We know that you do just incredible work throughout the year, and of course, as we start the next legislative session, there are a lot of topics of interest and things that are going to be at front of mind being debated here in the next few weeks. It's important that the public is engaged, and this is a real opportunity for us to begin that engagement. I'll just start my comments by saying, we've spent the last few weeks leading up to session, meeting with different groups and organizations, hearing what they've got to say, and also it helps us keep in mind what the average family and average worker is experiencing and has been experiencing over the last couple of years. there have been so many different disruptions, and what people need right now more than anything is to have leadership and people-focused leadership, trying to help the average person, the average family across the state, whether it is improving access to healthcare, improving the quality of education available in our state, or making sure that the economy is working for the average person. Repeatedly over the last few years with one-party control in Iowa, we've seen a lot of those opportunities missed and a lot of them squandered. Governor Reynolds will be offering her condition of the state address on Tuesday evening. And what I hope to hear is that we are going to be focusing our time and energy this legislative session on helping the average family. But Governor Reynolds repeatedly has shown that she's more interested in helping those at the top, big corporations, and those who have more means than the average family. We've seen in the last couple of years that the haves and have-nots, the gap between them continues to expand, whether it's wealth disparity or opportunity. And I think that the people's condition of the state should be about making sure the average family can earn a good living, bring home a paycheck that helps them to provide for their family, make sure that even during these difficult times and pressing healthcare matters, they have access to good healthcare and also security, both economic and in retirement and healthcare, to make sure that they really have the confidence that they can provide for their families and create good long-term growth opportunities for the next generation in the state. Governor Reynolds really has missed the opportunities that have been made available to her. And we continue to see that even with a state budget that is ample, the conversation is not about how to use those dollars to invest in families and working Iowans and how to create those opportunities long-term. It's more conversation that Republicans and Governor Reynolds continue to focus on giving more to those that already have means. I'm just glad that we'll be going down, standing shoulder to shoulder as Democrats and people who are interested in creating those opportunities and standing up to the powers that be. We're going to stand shoulder to shoulder all session long and make sure that your voice is well represented and that we're down there fighting hard to make sure that we've got a seat at the table, and so do you. Thanks so much. I'll turn it back to Matt.
Representative Hall, thank you so much for that, and for continuing to fight for the things that we all believe in. Look forward to working with you this session to do just that. And on the not the flip side, but in the opposite chamber, we have another great champion for Iowa families here with us. It's my pleasure to turn it over to Iowa Senator Jackie Smith. Senator Smith, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Matt. This great opportunity for us to tell other folks what folks have been telling us. Like Matt said, or Chris said, for the last couple weeks, we have been meeting with stakeholders, getting a lot of input on what our families need. And at the same point in time, we've been able to hear what the Republican plan is for Iowa. And quite honestly, the only thing that I hear are tax cuts and some other crazy policies that I'll review in a minute. But to me, you cannot cut taxes and expect a lot of growth at the same time. You cannot cut your way to growth. Berkeley Bedell was a representative for a long time up in this Northwest Iowa. He was in Washington, D.C., and he talks about that. He talked about that quite a bit. He has a couple books on it. His business model was you cannot cut your revenue and expect to have a vibrant business or a vibrant community. When I hear the Republicans and Governor Reynolds talking about banning books, for instance, instead of funding our schools, I think, why are we going to spend our time on that? That is not what people are telling us. We even had a city librarian tell me that is starting to trickle into city library now, where people are coming in and wanting to determine what books other people read. So that to me is frightening. I think it's frightening to a lot of Iowans, and quite frankly, it's not how they want their leaders to spend their time. there's a lot of time spent on stripping rights away from Iowans. Women, we have to fight for our right to make healthcare decisions. There's every attempt, to diminish that. LGBTQ, there's always a batch of bills that we spend way too much time on trying to figure out how to make life harder for our friends and our colleagues by stripping away their rights and just making their lives personally miserable. That's not what we're hearing that people want. People want job opportunities. They want a K-12 system that educates their kids so they can grow up and be productive members of our community. They want childcare assistance. They want their parents to be able to get good care, in a nursing home or in home health care. We're not paying people a lot compared to the CEO. What CEOs are making in corporations, there's a mismatch, and people are sick of it. So they are demanding that leaders work in a bipartisan manner to raise wages and to make our lives easier. And I don't see that happening under the Reynolds administration. So I'll leave it at that and look forward to some questions at the end if we have some.
Thank you so much, Senator Smith, and for all you're doing. That's a good reminder to put questions in the chat if you have them, and we'll get to them after our final speaker, and who is of course carrying on the good fight, not in the halls of the state capitol, but in Sioux City as a city council member. So certainly, last but not least, our friend Sioux City Council Member Alex Waters.
Matt, thank you so much. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least start with a little bit of telling the story of what's going on in Sioux City specifically before I think a little more broadly about what we have going on in the state, the legislature, and how that affects Sioux City and our growth. Because I truly feel that when I was first elected to the city council in 2017, I said, regardless of what happened in that election, Sioux City was going to go through a transformation led by what the efforts the city council were doing. And since being elected, I think we've done a lot of great things that have helped that momentum and really continued that revitalization. In fact, it's not just me and other members of the city council that are recognizing some of the growth that we've been able to accomplish. In fact, realtor.com actually ranked Sioux City number 5 trendiest city in the United States where you can still afford to buy a home. Smart Asset ranked Sioux City number 3 for the most livable city in the United States. And finally, Sioux City metro area was ranked number 1 in economic development for populations under 200K by Site Selection magazine. And it's the 9th time we've had that honor since 2007. I mean, we're doing incredible things. I think of some of the recent projects that have been completed, especially regarding our downtown. We've had a number of historic properties that have been invested in. You can look to the 2 multi-use buildings that were remodeled and renovated, the Commerce Building as well as the Hatch Building, and turned into state-of-the-art mixed-use apartments, market rate apartments. You look at the Warrior Hotel and the Davidson Building. If you have not seen that property, make sure you get a tour next time you're up here, Matt. I'll make sure to line that up. It's a beautiful place. In addition to these great properties in our downtown, you also see a revitalization of the arts and some of the arts coming to the forefront. You look at the renovation of the new Art SUX Gallery that was a renovated space in our downtown that actually has a great coffee shop that was able to open and expand in it as well, where artists can come together and collaborate. And then in addition to that growth and economic investment, I think really about what we're doing with quality of life amenities. I think I look to really some of the projects that we have underway, whether you're talking the riverfront redevelopment or our trail system. And finally, I would just also point to some of the other major industrial projects that are underway, such as Sabre Industries or Oracle Aviation announcing a flight school at our airport. There's a lot of exciting things happening in Sioux City. And I'm excited about the momentum that we're experiencing. However, I would tell you that I do have some serious concerns about the tone that we are setting in the legislature and from the governor's office to continue that momentum. And so I need to think, I ask the legislature and the governor to think strategically about what we are doing, what we are passing, and really the emphasis that we are putting on some of the issues that we are bringing forward, especially this coming session. I would highlight just a few. First, I really think about healthcare and how it impacts not only myself, but also my community. For those of you that don't know, I'm actually a C5, C6 quadriplegic. I use Medicaid for the employed, and I have for some time. And I understand as a firsthand individual using these programs, what happens when we put profit over people. When we're looking at managed care organizations that would much rather focus on how they're able to improve their bottom line than improve the quality of life for its consumers. It's something that I worry about. In addition to managed care and what has happened in that front, I also think of the pandemic. Really, what has been happening in this legislature and on the governor's watch. I worry about the cases that we have in Woodbury County. I know my fiance works in a hospital system here in town, and I know what is being taxed and expected of our healthcare professionals in the hospital. I look at some of the recent data coming out as far as Woodbury County results specifically, and Matt, they're staggering. We have COVID cases, the positivity percentage is doubling. The cases that we have are doubling, and we need to make sure that we're emphasizing the importance of vaccinations as well as masking and taking care of our fellow citizens. If we lead with science, we listen to the doctors and those healthcare professionals, then we can truly create a healthcare system that's putting people over these policies and lowering the cost to each and every one of us. And that's something, no matter Democrat or Republican, we should all be getting behind. And another issue that I would really just highlight that I've seen has been affecting us is really the taxing of the educational system and some of the things that we've been passing. In fact, we recently have an educator that was elected to the city council, and I've been fortunate enough to hear him speak firsthand to some of the things that they're experiencing and some of the ways that they've really seen an impact. So some of the policies and what's been happening, whether it's COVID specific or some of the funding of how public schools have gone underfunded. And so I would truly say that we need to continue to focus on these types of things that are going to lift up our community and allow us to continue to experience this momentum, some of which we are experiencing, but some that I am seeing that are hurting because of the decisions that are coming out of Des Moines. And so I would urge, as I believe it was Senator Smith said, we need to continue to work together to focus on what we can do better and how we can better serve all of Iowans and not just those that represent in our party. Thank you, Matt.
Councilmember Waters, thank you so much. It's good to hear some good news that about what's happening, of course, with excuse me, as we head into a session that we expect will be filled with challenges for working families. I just want to underscore something you said about Medicaid. I mean, this is a perfect example and a really unfortunate example of what corporate Kim Reynolds does by, I mean, instead of managing healthcare in a way that's accessible and makes sense to protect people's livelihoods, she outsources it to companies that are primarily interested in padding their bottom line. So it's the kind of corporate decision that's, you know, based more on corporate greed than in improving our lives. So I'm really glad you brought that up. We have had 3 terrific speakers here today, and thank you to all 3 of you. At this point, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. Our digital director, Ivy Beckenholm, who's been managing this Zoom event for us, is going to send me any questions that you have. Excuse me. In the meantime, we do have one that was submitted for us, and that was a question asking, and this can go to any one of our 3 speakers, if if you all have any advice on how best to speak up during the legislative session. So of course, that can go to either Senator Smith or Representative Hall from a legislative perspective, or I'm sure that Councilmember Waters, you get your fair share of constituents contacting you too. So it probably doesn't, but I'm sure that advice would be very similar as well. So how can we stand up for what we believe in during the legislative session? And so, yeah, I see Senator Smith, you've taken yourself off of mute, so I'll turn it over to you.
I'll go ahead and
Great.
throw out a few ideas. The League of Women Voters does host a forum once a month, the last Saturday of the month, January, February, March, perhaps April for still in session. So that's one opportunity. It's on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock, 10 to about 11:30 or 12 at the Sioux City Museum. So that's just a regular scheduled meeting. In the Senate, because of COVID, we will have rules this year, like we had last year, where the public will be able to Zoom in during a subcommittee meeting. And let me tell you, subcommittee meetings is the only time during the legislative process that citizens or any individual can, state a concern or an opinion or ask a question. So the fact that we're from Sioux City and it's approximately a 3-hour drive, I would certainly suggest that that you consider that option so you don't have to drive 3 hours to participate. I believe Senate Democrats will have a Facebook page that will highlight some of the more exciting, maybe controversial subcommittee meetings of the day and give you a list of ones that you can, join if your schedule allows. Of course, we all have phones, cell phones, that we can be reached on. Mine, is public on and I'm always, I either call back or I will answer. Email works as well. Stopping me in the grocery store in the aisle, that happens a lot too. So that's the advantage of a small community when you know a lot of people. You just do a lot of grocery store and talking and giving out information. So that's a few ideas. I do know the House, I'll let Chris speak to that. They will not have the same Zoom option that the Senate has. I'm sorry about that, but I think that is one of the best things that came out of COVID was having just a little bit more access in Des Moines.
I agree very much with Senator Smith and some of the suggestions she laid out there. Generally speaking, our contact information is pretty easy to find. You can go to the legislative website and contact information for most legislators. Oftentimes their cell phone included is going to be listed right on there. And especially during, the 3 or 4 months of the year that we're down in Des Moines, working on your behalf, it can be really nice to hear from people at home. The Iowa House does not have the same rules that allow for people to participate in a subcommittee via Zoom. You can watch a lot of the committee meetings or subcommittees, but you can't necessarily offer comments. And so that can be a little bit tough. We are really inundated with emails. I would say every day, several hundred emails come in with people from across the state offering comments or thoughts on different bills that are moving through the process. So it does help if you're reaching out to us by email, if you include where you live, if you're from our district, include your address, because our clerks will help us to sift those out, and we often prioritize responding to people who live at home in our district first before we try to get to a lot of the emails that may come from outside of our district. Aside from that, phone, email, and yes, those forums at home on the weekends. Legislators in every district will be having some sort of a forum, and it's your opportunity to really contact them, let them know how you feel and what you think. And we believe in power by numbers. If you're going to one of those meetings, or if you're reaching out on an issue that is important, make sure that you're also sharing that with friends and family who feel similarly and encourage them to do the same. It makes a big difference and a different impression if we get 10 emails on an issue or 5 voicemails on an issue more than just one. We know that it conveys how high and how much people are thinking about that issue at home, and organize your friends and family to be vocal also. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, I will add, thank you both for that. And Councilman Waters, I'm not to put you on the spot, but if you have anything to add, you're welcome to do that. But I will say quickly that that we at Progress Iowa, we do our best to help monitor the what's going on at the state legislature. So we dropped a link in the chat to sign up for our updates. We do our best to send out those subcommittee meetings that Senator Smith talked about on a daily basis. Since the Republicans have taken over the majority, they do those on pretty short notice, but we try to let people know when those are happening so that they can give input. And we do our best to inform folks about those legislative coffees or those meetings that are happening, hosted by groups all over the state. One request that I would make of everyone on this call, including the legislators and electeds, is that if you hear about some of these events, please let us know, because sometimes they're not listed online. They're just they happen pretty quickly, and sometimes just because of organizational issues, but sometimes we think by design they're happening without a lot of public notice. So if you hear about these kind of events where there are legislators meeting and or providing the opportunity for a public forum, please tell us, because we can help promote those and try and drive people to ask questions and participate. We do have a couple other questions, a couple of other questions here. I'm going to go ahead and ask both of these, and then see if our panel wants to answer either one of them. Matthew Kane asks, what do you think will be the biggest challenge in the state preventing you from reaching across the aisle, be it concessions that you foresee needing to be made or distractions from important issues? And then Jan Libby asks, the 2022 legislative session promoted the Farm to Table Task Force and the Innovative Butchery Bill. Both have generated reports. Can the speakers address how they see Iowa readiness to support our local and regional food system? So on either one of those, I'll turn it over to our speakers. Representative Hall.
Sure. I'll address the second question first. I served on the subcommittee for the butchery innovation bill last year that kind of generated that interim committee and some recommendations. I think throughout COVID, you've seen actually a lot of our local food systems and I'd say supply chain issues exposed for the challenges that exist. During COVID, we know that a lot of local meat lockers were at capacity and actually unable to process meat fast enough to allow for families to really make good use of them. And so this grant program is basically providing an opportunity for local meat processors and lockers to expand their facility and build out their infrastructure in order to provide food at a greater capacity, and also encourage and underscore the fact that a lot of families lately in recent years have been more curious to know where their food is coming from. People, me included, I like to know if it was a local farmer or if there is a specialty product that was grown locally, the same as I like to go to a farmer's market. And so the recommendations coming from that task force are going to hopefully steer us in the direction of either higher education, technical training at our community colleges that can put people into those programs, or also continue to encourage farm to table, locally sourced foods for the average family. One of the things that I also read about recently that I will be introducing a bill on is USDA grants that basically subsidized a school district that was trying to find and put food on their lunch table for their students if it came from a farmer locally. And so I think as those USDA grants ran out, you're going to have school districts who really enjoyed that experience. They were able to purchase more from local farmers and serve their students good, wholesome, nutritious food. But those grants, as they expire, won't be available, and it might be something that the state can try to continue forward since federal funding won't be available. tackle that issue, and come to think of it, I don't recall what the first question was.
About working across the aisle.
I know it's true of both Senator Smith and I that we have good relationships across the aisle, and a lot of that stems from just the interest and the energy that you put into building those relationships. Even after a tough debate, I can be frustrated and at my wit's end with some of my colleagues, but the most important thing that I've tried to do is come in there the next morning and say good morning to people, ask them how they're doing, try to move on from the battles of yesterday and engage the battles of today. And, reaching across the aisle, having those bipartisan relationships, it's important. And it also hopefully will work to preserve Iowa as a place where government can do well by people, and legislators are locally elected community leaders who have an interest in working with each other, rather than what I think we see and feel often at national politics. I would prefer that Iowa remains friendly and welcoming, and regardless of who you are or how you're registered, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or independent, we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to represent all voices equally and keep a good balanced state government, rather than one that's governing from the fringe. And that takes relationships, and it takes concern and empathy for people coming from a different place than the one that you're coming from. That's how I try to approach my Republican colleagues, and I'm glad that I have true friendships across the aisle, even when we will disagree on major issues.
Thank you. I think Senator Smith, or at least you took yourself off of mute. So
I did. I thought
okay,
I'd
great.
make a
Go ahead.
couple comments as
Of course.
well. I think the biggest challenge to bipartisanship is the fact that all three levels of government, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, are all one party. That tends to make it a little bit harder to get a Democratic bill through. In fact, most amendments are never accepted. There can be some bipartisanship prior to a bill being fired. Democrat name probably shouldn't be on that bill if it's ever going to make it through. I've been told that by my Republican colleagues, that it will take Republican names to get on there. So I think my relationships are fine on the other side too. I do work hard with that, but I think there's, less need to listen because it's too lopsided. And at least in the Senate, if you watch the Iowa legislature, it is more extreme. The more extreme ideas do come out of the Senate, and some of that, there is just no bipartisanship. I look for it wherever I can, but I simply cannot, be bipartisan when it comes to corporations getting all the benefits in Iowa. It's hard for me to support just the very extreme things, but there certainly are lots of things every day that get 100% vote on both sides. I think it's kind of exciting that Iowa has the butchery bill and more options for farmers to take their cattle for processing. Part of the problem that we see is meat prices. I hear meatflation. It's so high, and it's not that the cattle farmers are making money. It's the guys in between. So hopefully we can get some better pricing, some more consistent pricing if there's more competition in the field. Federal legislation, I know President Biden, has some money that he's going to funnel into processing plants, and I think that's good, and that kind of complements, what I was trying to do too. So I guess that's just my comment on, that's just what I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It certainly does take two people to have a partnership. So it's that always can present some challenges. So I think we have those are the last questions that we have, unless there's any more in the. I'm going to just double check the chat here. I think that is the last one, and and with that, I mean, I want to just make sure and thank thank all of our speakers again, Representative Chris Hall, Senator Jackie Smith, and Sioux City Council Member Alex Waters. I want to thank the partner organizations, the APWU of Iowa, AFSCME Council 61, Healthcare for America Now Iowa, Interfaith Alliance Iowa, Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, Iowa Citizen Action Network, the Iowa Alliance for Retired Americans, Iowa Main Streets and County Roads, Lower Drug Prices Now Iowa, Progress Iowa, and Tax March Iowa. It's a long list, but to go through, but that just shows how many people it takes and how many it takes to pull off this kind of a statewide, more or less virtual tour. There are 7 events going on for the people's condition of the state. So thank you so much for joining us today, for listening to a great panel. And Councilmember Waters, did you have something else to add before we go?
I did, if you didn't mind. I just wanted to say, I believe that Robert Fisher had raised his hand.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If there was a question there, or
in the chat, he had written me, so I could just read this and Robert, we're trying to keep other than the speakers off of about promoting. About the I had asked him, and we could certainly promote this. He wanted to invite folks to learn more about the Iowa Development Disabilities Council and the 2022 legislative priorities. He's a current council member. The mission of the there's an event, I believe, and Alex, you may know more about this too, but like on January 14th at 11:30 a.m. There's a longer message from Mr. Fisher that I said we could certainly help promote to our networks too. So, but I believe it was to promote the January 14th event. So I just
saw a hand raised, Matt. So I was like, hey, I want to slow you down, buddy, and make sure we get to it all.
No, and I appreciate that very much. But we will certainly do our best to promote that event and anything else that you all think needs to be lifted up, because we want to make sure that everyone's good work gets the attention that it rightly deserves. So thank you for that. So with that, I will just say thanks again to Representative Chris Hall, Senator Jackie Smith, and Councilmember Alex Waters for speaking here today. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this event, we are recording, so this recording will be shared on a post-event press release. It'll also be available on Progress Iowa's social media and YouTube channel, our social media accounts and our YouTube channel. So look for it there too. And please sign up for our updates to stay involved and get make sure that your voice is heard during the legislative session. So thank you again, everyone, for attending, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.